Okay, let's dig into this. The whole concept of the artist, it just feels like, and we're all like, it's always shifting, doesn't it?
It really does. Who gets to wear that label? And, what even counts as art these days?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we've got some fascinating sources here that really tackle these questions head on. They pull from philosophy, social commentary, all
Yeah,
sorts.
different angles.
So today we're going to try and unpack some big ones. How have things like, new tech and different ways of working changed art?
And what about that dynamic between artists and society? Are they mirrors
No.
or agitators?
We're outsiders, and this idea is artist, even a universal thing, or more of a Western idea, maybe different from, say, craft.
That's a huge question. Plus, how do things like new media, global connections, how does
Yeah.
that reshape everything?
And the big finale, responsibility.
Mm.
Do artists owe anything to their audience, to causes, to social norms when they're expressing themselves?
It's a lot to cover.
It is. So our mission today is basically to sift through these sources, pull out the key insights, and hopefully give you a clearer picture of this, complex world of art and artists.
Okay, so starting off, it's interesting how we assume artist is just a role everyone gets. Fanon points this out.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Well, he mentions in some old courtly civilizations, the term vazaha meant honorable stranger. It suggests maybe a way of seeing outsiders, maybe even creators, without slotting them into that distinct artist box we use in the West.
So less defined, maybe.
Potentially. The boundaries seem less rigid than how we often think of it.
That really bumps up against what Taylor says, doesn't it?
Yeah.
About the Western artist being the prime example of self-definition.
Exactly. It ties right into our modern obsession with authenticity, with being original, finding your unique voice. The artist becomes the sort of ultimate individual.
The one who really nails putting their unique self out there.
Precisely. And then you look at Nietzsche talking about how the idea of good first came about.
Right, that wasn't objective
Yeah.
either.
Not at all. He argues it was the powerful, the high-stationed, who just declared themselves and their actions good. You can kind of see how that could easily map onto art.
So whoever has the power gets to define what good art is. And who's a good artist?
It suggests that, it's about who holds that cultural power, that capital, to set the terms, to assign value.
It makes you really question who historically got to set the artistic agenda. But Taylor also brings in Poiesis. That's about making, right?
Yes, making. And he connects it both to art and to self-discovery, finding yourself.
So that sounds broader. Like creativity isn't just for this exclusive artist club.
Exactly. Poiesis suggests a more fundamental human thing, bringing something new into existence. Could be a sculpture, could be, shaping who you are as a person.
Okay.
And if you think about Confucius, his focus on virtue and the polite arts, well, maybe cultivating those refined skills, that ethical conduct, could almost be seen as a form of artistry itself.
Blurring the lines between being good and making something beautiful or skillful.
Right. A broader sense of skilled creation, maybe.
Okay, so who counts as an artist is definitely complicated. Depends on context. Let's shift to how art gets made. Taylor talks about new artistic languages being a qualitative change, not just, new styles.
Yeah. He uses the example of how people used to have this shared understanding of things, like, say, angels being real entities in the world. That shared context is fading.
Right, that common ground isn't quite there anymore.
Yeah.
So how does losing that, plus all this new technology, how does that actually change art itself?
Well, that loss of a shared ontic order, as Taylor calls it. Think about it. If artists could once assume their audience recognized certain symbols, maybe religious icons,
Everyone was on the same page, basically.
more or less, it gave them a rich foundation. Now, with these new artistic languages, artists are often creating without those shared anchors. And then technology comes in. Taylor sees it as double-edged.
How so?
On one hand, there's instrumental reason, technology's drive for efficiency, control. That can actually fragment our experiences, everyone in their own media bubble.
Totally. Our personalized feeds.
Exactly. But on the other hand, tech also creates amazing new ways for artists to express themselves, to connect, to collaborate in ways that just weren't possible before.
So it fragments and connects.
It does both. And Taylor reminds us that art, fundamentally, like self-discovery, needs imagination. Tech can be a tool to boost that imagination, even as it messes with shared understanding. It's a bit of a paradox.
Okay, let's get into that tension. Artist versus society. Feels that there's always some push and pull there.
Oh, definitely.
We have the artist as reflector. You mentioned Fanon earlier. He talks about literature, poetry of liberation, acting like a mirror to colonial reality.
Yeah, reflecting those often harsh truths right alongside maybe more straightforward social analysis. Art holding up that mirror, even when the reflection is uncomfortable.
Showing society itself.
That's a vital role, witnessing, reflecting. But Nietzsche gives us another take with his free spirits.
The agitators.
Kind of, yeah. They're the ones who question everything, who challenge the accepted beliefs. Even if they're still seeking some kind of truth, their art can shake things up, poke holes in societal norms.
The boat rockers. But Nietzsche also talks about the artist as an outsider, right? Someone stepping back.
He does. He uses the metaphor of the desert, a place for strong, independent minds to escape the noise and superficiality of society, finding clarity by withdrawing.
So hiding away.
Not necessarily hiding, but maybe creating distance to think more deeply, to develop a perspective that isn't just shaped by trying to fit in.
Okay, that makes sense. But that distance then raises the question of accountability, doesn't it? Plato was pretty direct about wanting control over poets.
Very direct. Especially how gods and heroes were shown. He worried about the impact on young people's morals.
The idea that art could be dangerous, lead people astray.
Essentially, yes. That unchecked expression could cause a laxity of morals, which brings up censorship, or at least social responsibility.
And Mill talks about this too, but maybe from a different angle. The tyranny of public opinion.
Right. It's not just laws. It's how society itself, or powerful part of it, can shut down expression it doesn't like. He compares it to religious intolerance silencing dissent.
So social pressure can be just as powerful as legal censorship.
Absolutely. And Mill makes this sharp point. Even radical thinkers often attacked specific bad opinions rather than challenging the whole idea that society should control individual expression.
So they didn't question the principle itself.
Often not, according to Mill. It shows how deep that idea of societal oversight runs and how hard it is to argue for total artistic freedom against the grain.
Okay, let's loop back to artists maybe being a Western label. Fanon's point about Antillean culture wanting to master the colonizer's language and norms for acceptance.
Yeah, that drive for honorary citizenship, it really suggests our idea of artistic recognition might be tangled up with cultural power, assimilation.
So our picture of the lone genius creating for art's sake, maybe that doesn't fit everywhere.
It might not translate perfectly. And what about that line we draw between art and craft? The sources don't spell it out, but you sense art in the West gets loaded with aesthetic value, self-wholeness, like Taylor mentions.
Right, and craft is maybe seen as more functional.
Yeah.
Or traditional.
Possibly more about utility or following established methods. Nietzsche's idea about naming things being an act of power could fit here too. Maybe art got named and valued highly by the powerful, setting it apart from mere craft.
Defining it by contrasting it with something else.
It's about what gets elevated, what gets assigned that special status.
Okay, so now bring in today's world. New media, the internet, constant global interaction. How does that stir the pot?
Well, Taylor's qualitative change in artistic languages, new media and global flow seem likely to just accelerate that massively.
Makes sense. Everything moves faster, more connections.
Exactly. Digital platforms make so many diverse forms of expression accessible. It challenges the old gatekeepers, the old definitions of what even is art.
And Fanon's ideas about language and cultural identity.
They seem really relevant. As artists from everywhere connect, use new tools, share globally, it's bound to reshape how art is made and how we all understand and define it. The boundaries get blurrier.
Which brings us right to the thorny issue. Duties, limits, freedom. Taylor sets up that tension between self-truth and artists' drive for authentic expression and intersubjective justice.
Yeah, our duties to each other, social norms. Can an artist pushing boundaries ever perfectly balance those two?
Seems unlikely. A constant tightrope walk.
Maybe in an unresolvable one. And Nietzsche's resentment, that adds another layer. Could artists sometimes use their work to channel resentment? And if they do, what's their responsibility for how that lands?
Heavy stuff. And we circle back again to Plato and Mill. Plato arguing for state guidance.
Suggesting clear limits for the good of the whole.
While Mill argues society should only step in when expression causes direct harm to others.
Which forces that crucial question, where is that line with art? What counts as harm enough to justify limiting freedom, whether by law or just public condemnation?
It's a never-ending debate, isn't it?
Absolutely. A constant negotiation.
So, wrapping this up.
Yeah.
Wow. It's clear that artist and art are not simple fixed things. They're shaped by culture, by tech, by that push and pull between individual creativity and societal expectations.
definitely not static concepts. They're alive, evolving, and it really leaves a big question hanging there for you, the listener.
Yeah.
Considering everything we've touched on, all these perspectives, the impact of tech, global exchange, what do you think are the crucial qualities or responsibilities for an artist today? How do you make sense of art in this landscape that just keeps changing?
That's a great question to chew on. Definitely food for thought. And, we hope you'll keep exploring these sources and the ideas they raise. There's always more to uncover here.